Now we get to the interesting part of mise-en-scène. What is that about? How do the eyes scan? What is setting? And let's talk a little bit about the color palette as well. So what exactly is mise-en-scène? Well, it's an idea that we talk about how the arrangement of scenery could work, or how props and settings work on a stage or on the screen. And it's a very important thing for a director, and certainly now that you're a presenter or a speaker who's directing your own material, you have to think quite carefully about that. And to start with, I want to introduce you to this image, and I want you to look at this picture and just spend a few seconds checking out what is going down here. Now, if I ask you what it is that you saw first, and if you had to think about it, you probably saw the red cloth first before you saw something that is happening on a stage, and then your eyes may have gone down to the crowd that's at the bottom of the show. And if you really think about it, this is what your eyes would have done. Now, we call it a Z-scan because the eyes constantly scan from left to right. In a Western world, we read from left to right, and because of that, this is the way that the eye would read any scene. That Z is very important. And so you may have seen that red cloth first before you got to see that it was a lady holding it and that she's held up above a crowd. And that's kind of interesting because it is how people read stuff. It means that if you're going to look at that Z shape and decide about your branding, for example, on your slides, you want to consider the 4 positions, which one is most intrusive and which one is going to be the ultimate, where probably it's going to sit as a comfortable branding at the bottom corner. And you saw how I very casually segued into my website address there. But when you brand your slides and you start thinking about stuff, you go, where is the best prominent position, which is top left, and then as the eyes scan, where is the lowest position, which would be the right-hand side at the bottom. Now, it's a little bit different for online. So online people scan similarly in a screen situation in a cinema, a Z scan, but the other scan that we also get is an F. So the eyes would start on the top left-hand side. If you think about websites, and I'm going to again surreptitiously get my own websites in there, but when you see any of the social media and the way that it's designed, you can see how the F superimposes onto it. The eyes first go from a logo, what is the brand, what does it work? It scans to the right, then it starts again on the left-hand side and goes usually to about the middle, which is a hot spot. The middle of the screen is a hot spot, and then it goes down the side. And those are really the most popular spaces. So if you start thinking about how this can transfer or translate in how we place ourselves, there is no mistake that I'm sitting on the right-hand side of the screen, and on the left-hand side of the long shot, I have a screen which talks about the kind of stuff that I do, because this is the prominence for me. I would really like my audience to know more about left, right, and center prominence, and I am secondary because I'm supportive of the material. So you may think that a presenter that's on the left-hand side with a screen on their right-hand side seems or may come across more arrogant or more self-important to the actual material. And this would be true on a very, very subtle level. If you go and look at that picture, you'll see there's a high importance on the left of the character. Middle of the road is sometimes a bit boring. You know, if a shot has somebody who sits right in the middle, and particularly if they're coming with that voice at you, they're really going to kill it, and that is just not going to attract attention. So you want to be a little bit off screen, and then of course that guy on the right hand side, the panda, well, who knows? It builds empathy, and it is really, really a softer position, I would say, for something. Now, what is it about mise-en-scène? I hope that I pronounce it well, and if there are French speakers, I apologize. This really means staging. How is a scene staged, and what is going on in the scene? Now, if we start talking about composition, this is a whole show, and we're going to do a lot of that next week when we talk about design for the small screen. But for tonight, I really wanted to focus a little bit on just the basic elements of composition. Its line, its shape and form, its color, texture, shape, space, and of course the values of intensities of either saturation or light or dark or so that there's a real great balance of these 6 elements that help you to get into that space. If you start looking at how a shot is composed, We're going to talk a lot about this next week, but it does help to just preempt it or tell you in terms of composition, this is really where you're looking at the rule of three. You want to always segment the screen. There is a golden section, which is that the middle sections of the screen, or you could start working with golden triangles, and means that you have points of interest in the frame where those lines would match or where they would meet. And that is really an interesting way of just starting by saying, if I divide the screen up into three, that is a lot more interesting rather than to be absolutely dead center and so on. And the last note I can give you on this is obviously, as we get into left, right, or middle, where to place somebody, it really is to start thinking about how you're communicating. Are you communicating in a close-up of a shot? Are you communicating wider? Are you prominent left? Are you less prominent on the right? Or is it something really important that you want to say, and for that you lean up into the middle of the screen and get it either for importance, or if you want to create it as a dull moment, then that's also where you would be. The last thing that I want to say in this kind of space of props and makeup and costume and stuff is really to start looking at the color tones as well. And I would always go back to where you started with your brand and your CI, because it's important to have elements of that in there. This is a color palette, would you believe, for the movie, a favorite movie of mine, which is Incredibles by Pixar. And the bottom there has the range of primary colors or main colors, key colors they used. But what they do in the animation world is you can see how they plot out virtually every scene. This is the work of the fabulous Lou Romano, who did the design of the show. And you can see how he plots out the family's colors, which is the reds and the yellows and blacks, and how he puts it into the rest of the world when they start to plot the whole movie and all the scenes, to decide where the hot scenes with the lava will be and where the family would be and where blue sky sort of scenes would be. It's quite important to think through your presentation that way, because it helps you to get the light and the shade, and it also visually spaces it out in the same way that you would think about when you're going to be dramatic and louder and when you're going to pull back and be quiet. The same is going to happen with those non-verbal cues if you employ these kind of techniques and work with color and work with the imagery much more, because they say so much.